So today you're going to watch one of the most popular films of the early 20th century. Birth of a Nation came out in 1915 and was based on a book by Thomas Dixon called The Klansman. And so estimates suggest that perhaps 200 million people watched this film throughout the world. Right? Some historians suggest that when adjusted for inflation, it might be the most profitable film in American history. And it's also one of the most racist films in American history. So one of the most racist films might also be America's most profitable film. We're watching this film because it gets to one of the lessons I want you to get out of this course, right? History is often manipulated to advance political causes. In this case, a film produced in 1915 manipulates the history of the Civil War and Reconstruction to support the continued oppression of African Americans. Right? And so your goal today is to figure out how the film manipulates history. Here are a few things I want you to look for. The film is split into two. The first half covers the origins of the Civil War and the war itself. And so in this section, I want you to ask whether the film follows the Lost Cause narrative. And your textbook outlines two of the three pieces of the Lost Cause narrative. The first part of the Lost Cause portrays slavery as a benevolent institution where slaves were cared for and were relatively happy. The second part argues that slavery had nothing to do with the Civil War, right? The South seceded to preserve state rights. And the third part, which isn't in your textbook, argues that the South lost the Civil War because the North just had more resources and troop numbers. This helped portray Southerners as honorable fighters who would have won the Civil War if both sides had equal resources. The second half of the film deals with the traditional Reconstruction period. One of the popular arguments of the time was that African Americans weren't ready to participate in democracy. Another popular argument against black equality focused on the consequences of giving African Americans political equality. So in this section, I want you to ask if the film portrays African Americans as lacking the qualities to participate fully in democracy. I also want you to ask whether the film suggests that there are consequences to giving African Americans full political equality. In particular, pay attention to the portrayals of black politicians and also the portrayal of Gus, a black soldier who becomes a key figure in the film. And finally, I want you to ask, who are the heroes and villains in this film? Heroes and villains always give you a good sense of what messages the director wants viewers to get out of the film. So if you have any questions as you watch this film, you can always email me.